Season 5 of Modern Warfare 3 is here, and so I got y'all with the new top 5 best setups to be using right now if you want to pop off. With the first two guns being honorable mentions, we got the STG-44 and the Static HV. Two brand new guns into the game. They are very good, and the builds I got for you guys have no recoil and a lot of damage range, making them very viable in Warzone and multiplayer. Right there, you guys can see I'd even control it and we were beaming. So for the muzzle, if you're playing multiplayer, run the Scratch 20L suppressor. In Warzone, run the Quartermaster suppressor. This is a brand new attachment in the game, keeps you off the radar as well as adding so much recoil control, and you don't really have any cons at all. We don't really need a barrel in this thing because it already has 44 meters, and then the bolt velocity is almost 1,000. Although if you are playing Warzone, you are going to want to take off the underbarrel to then add this barrel. Multiplayer, obviously you want to use the XRK, allows you to move around, feel a little bit lighter on the map. You are going to want to run the 40 round mag. You only have about 30 rounds default. Warzone, you'd want to run the 50 round mag. For the optic, I think the iron sights are a little bit cluttered. I will show you guys real quick. It's a little bit easier to run with an optic. In Warzone, I'll run the Jack glassless, and then multiplayer I got the MK3 reflector. If you like the iron sights, then you got an extra attachment, then you can add a barrel, laser, ammunition, and you can't run a rig up with this stock. But this stock, so much recoil control without having really any cons at all. Can get away with the no stock. I will have a dedicated video on this thing later, but overall you guys should do perfectly fine with this build. Now for the SMG, this reminds me of the PDW from like Black Ops 2. This thing is super easy to use with this build. You got no recoil, you can use it across the map. Again, there was a lot of different builds for this gun. This is just one that everyone should do very well with. For the barrel, we got the long barrel to maximize that damage range. For the muzzle, we got the Quartermaster suppressor because this thing bounces around a little bit. It's going to eliminate that and keep you off the radar. And then to move around the map a little bit faster, we got the XRK Edge BW4 hand stop on there. And then to add a little bit more recoil control, we got the SK24. We don't really need to add anything to increase sprint to fire speed because it's already 84 milliseconds, which is very crazy, and it already has a lot of ammo. So this thing was probably going to be meta in Warzone and multiplayer. Then to add a little bit more sprint to fire speed, though, we got the TAC High V.4. You don't really need this, but you know, there's nothing really else that you should be really adding on the gun. Like, I don't think you need an optic or an ammunition or a laser, so that's why I just opted for a little bit more sprint to fire speed. No stock, also very good, but you have to keep your engagements very close quarters. Here's a screenshot of the build. For the next gun, this is the MCW. This thing got a buff in Warzone, not in multiplayer, but it's meta in multiplayer in Warzone. This thing is absolutely dumb broken. Got the Zemp Compensate Flash Hider to eliminate all the recoil. Sometimes I will add the Scratch 20L suppressor if I want to be off the radar. For the barrel, to maximize the damage range and that bolt velocity, which is super important, you want to run the MCW Cyclone long barrel. For the underbarrel, to allow you to move around the map a little bit faster, we got the XRK, which is really nice because it allows you to strafe very quick, which if you pair that up with the Jack Cutthroat, you have an insane strafe speed. It might be even a little bit too fast for you, so if the strafe speed's a little bit too awkward, then I would take off the underbarrel and I would add the DR6 hand stop, maximizing that sprint to fire speed, allowing you to run and gun a little bit easier with the gun. You could even take off the stock, go over to the rear grip, and then add the RB claw. That's how you're gonna have the littlest less recoil on the gun. I think the strafe speed's a little bit more important though, since the gun's already pretty easy to use. Then we got the MK3 reflector, since the iron sights are a little bit weird. In Warzone, I will add the Scratch 20, not Scratch, I will be adding the Jack glasses optic, so I get a little bit more zoom and recoil control. This is my favorite MCW in the game. Super dumb broken. Could even add the conversion kit and run a similar build, but I think that is a little bit better since it's a little bit more consistent. For the next build is going to be the SUPERI 46. It did receive a nerf in the recent update, but it was just a mobility nerf, so not like a damage range nerf at all, and so you guys still should be doing perfectly fine. This build right here is going to counteract that nerf. Since the gun is a little bit bouncy, we do have the Compensate Flash Hider on there to counteract some of that mobility nerf that it just got. We got the XRK Edge BW4 hand stop, although DR6 is still pretty good. I just think this one's a little bit better, so you can move around a little bit faster, which is why we got the Jack Cutthroat on here. This is going to allow you to move around faster and strafe faster, making yourself a harder target to hit. And then we are losing a little bit of our recoil control, but you're not going to notice that whatsoever. For the rear grip, this would be the personal preference part of the build. You don't really need the Phantom grip. The sprint to fire speed without the Phantom is going to be 104, which is right on the borderline of all the other SMGs. With the Phantom, you will have a faster one than everyone else, so that's why I do prefer that. Although a lot of the time I do take off the Phantom, go over to the barrel, and then run the short barrel, because then your sprint to fire speed will be very quick, and then yes, you'll have a little bit less range and recoil control, but as long as you're in the enemy's face, you will be absolutely popping off. That's why we got the 40 round mag on there as well, because it only has about 30 rounds. It's going to make it so you don't really have to worry about reloading as much. So again, you could take off the rig up to add that barrel, the short barrel, or if you want more recoil control, add the heavy barrel. Could even add an optic or the high grain rounds or the Khmer laser if you want a little bit more mobility. Now that's going to wrap it up for the SUPERI 46. Next up is the FJX HORUS. This thing got a little bit of a damage range nerf, so this build has a long barrel on there to counteract that nerf, and you still have a pretty good amount of mobility. Again, there's a lot of different builds for these guns. These are just ones that I prefer and why I recommend you guys to use right now. So the long barrel maximizes that range and that recoil control, hurting the mobility a little bit, and that's probably the biggest con of the class. So you could go over to the stock and add the modest on there. Just keep in mind there's going to be a little bit more, the Ripper light. Just keep in mind there's going to be a little bit of recoil on the gun, but Lopper is pretty fun. This gun is super satisfying to use since there is no recoil and you get a little bit of damage range. For the muzzle, to eliminate that recoil, we got the Zemp compensate flash hider on there, and since the fire rate's so fast, I think you really do need to have a 48 round mag on there. And then I think the iron sights are awful, so we got the MK3 reflector on there. Yeah, I guess you could take off the stock and then go over to the underbarrel and then add like the DR6. That's going to make it so then you get, oh no, I forgot they actually changed it, so you would have to add the skeletal vertical grip. This will give you sprint to fire speed and recoil control. Overall, this is going to be my favorite FJX Horus build. For the next gun, we are going to be using the BAL27. I believe they increased the overall recoil control, and so now this thing doesn't really shake around as much. Super easy gun to use. I've been having a great time with it before the buff, and so now it's going to be a lot better. If you want to be off the radar, add the Scratch 20L suppressor. I prefer having a little bit less recoil, so that's why I got the compensated flash hider on there. For the underbarrel, we have the XRK Edge BW4 hand stop to allow you to move around the map a little bit quicker. Previously, I would always add the DR6 because I really want a fast sprint to fire speed, but I have a little bit more enjoyable time using the guns when I can just run around faster. It's so much more fun to move fast on the map rather than have a little bit faster sprint to fire speed. For the magazine, you could take this off to then add like the high grain rounds if you want a little bit more damage range, but I think the damage range on the gun is already pretty good. Honestly, I would take off the magazine, add the high velocity if you don't want a magazine, because now it's going to feel like you're on a very good ping, and there really isn't any cons to run the high velocity rounds. And then we don't really need a barrel for the same reasons. And then for the rear grip, we are going to be adding the hammer grip just to maximize sprint to fire speed. It's not that good on the gun. That's one thing that sucks about this gun, is that sprint to fire speed is pretty slow, so hammer does make the gun feel a little bit better. Sometimes I will add the channel for that recoil control, but this thing just got a buff to its recoil control, so you should be perfectly fine. Then for the stock, we got the Ardent tack stock on there just to add that recoil control. Makes the gun a little bit easier to use. There's a couple other good stocks on this gun. Again, there's a lot of different builds, so if you find that the gun's already super easy to use, then add the Clarent light stock so then you can move around even faster. Overall though, this is going to be my favorite BAL27 build. And then to wrap it up, for the last build, we are going to be using the SVA 545. This thing is dumb broken. It has a very fast time to kill, no recoil whatsoever. I think I'm lagging a little bit or something in firing range. So for the barrel, we got the precision barrel to maximize range and bullet velocity. This build works great in Warzone. For the muzzle though, if you are in Warzone, you probably want to add the sonic suppressor, then use this thing in the semi-automatic mode. Multiplayer, I like to use it in the full auto. I like to move around a little bit faster, so we got the XRK Edge on there. Sometimes I will take off this stock and add a magazine, but the reason I got the stock is that the gun's just a little bit more consistent. It adds so much recoil control without really having that many cons, but you don't really need it, so you could take off the stock, add the 45 round mag or something else for mobility. For the optic, I like the MK3 reflector, although I think usually I'll use the Jack glasses. Doesn't really matter. It's whatever I'm feeling in the moment. That's gonna wrap it up for the video. Hopefully you guys did find this helpful. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe, and deuces.